Hi, I'm Kim Mooney with Practically Dying. Welcome back to another episode of Life and Death. You know, we're very complex beings, and as we try to bring death into the light, really we want to engage people in as many different ways as possible. And one of the things that's happening today that's really exciting is that there are significant organizations and groups who are coming together to influence the way that we live with life and die with death. And today we're going to talk about one of the most exciting projects that I have found. It's the Living and Dying Consciously project. I'd like to have my two guests, Kitty Edwards and Jeff Black, introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their connection to the project.
Hi, Kim.
Hi, Kitty.
Thanks for having me.
I'm so excited to have you here.
Well, I am Kitty Edwards. I'm the Executive Director of the Living and Dying Consciously project, which is a nonprofit organization that helps people live consciously through all of life's transitions. So we have a lot of fun doing that.
Mm-hmm. And it's not a local project.
No, it's actually international. Mm-hmm. We have people who train with us and take it back, our techniques back to their community.
That's great. Yeah. And Jeff, would you talk a little bit about yourself?
Yes, my name is Jeff Black. I'm a practicing psychiatrist here in South Carolina, and I'm on the board with the Living and Dying Consciously project, and became very interested in death and dying throughout my practice, and also how to use it in clinical practice to be able to help people with transitions as well. And the Living and Dying Consciously project is a great project that actually has helped me in my clinical work. And I'm connected to both the Living and Dying Consciously project and the other things that we offer through experiences with energy medicine and sort of trying to bridge the gap between what I was taught in medical school and what I wasn't taught in medical schools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're a bit of a hybrid. And we want more hybrids. We want people who have one foot in a couple of different worlds, so great.
It scares people though sometimes, although if you stay under the radar enough, then you just do what you do, and people have there's a real draw and a real passion for this kind of work, both I think with clinicians and with physicians and nurses especially, as well as with patients.
Mm-hmm. We've seen that before. You kind of have to sneak it in. And when there's a positive reaction, then you can actually describe how broad the base of work is. So
yeah, I sort of look for words to kind of help me know that a person is really moving in that way, and you know, energy's energy. Mm-hmm. No matter how you put it, whether you're using a typical the typical allopathic model for medicine or energy medicine from indigenous mm-hmm. healers. I mean, energy's energy. So people really want something like this.
Mm-hmm. Well, we are holistic beings. We don't know how to ask for it, but we are holistic beings.
Right.
So that takes me into the question about what you actually do. What is the basis? And who else is doing it besides you? Who's part of the organization?
Well, our focus is on using rituals and ceremonies from ancient traditions and bringing them into the modern age so that they're surprising and energetic, and they help people ground themselves in the changes that they're confronting. Mm-hmm. You know, in our culture, there's so much change. We change houses, we change relationships, we're single, we're parents, we're empty nesters, we're well, we're ill, we're dying. Mm-hmm. And all these changes and transitions can be felt more deeply and more consciously. You can move through them consciously by stepping into ceremony, using sacred space, and also practicing rites of passage.
I want to hear more about that.
Okay.
but seriously, when you talk about bringing in ancient rituals and rites, that feels so important, because one of the things that has changed is we're not connected to our past anymore. Right. We are dealing with whatever we can get our hands on right now, so that sounds critical. to what we're trying to do.
Well, and much of the work we do comes from indigenous cultures that are very grounded in their own environment, whether it be people living in the jungle or people living in high mountains or desert areas. They use the earth and the environment around them, and so we do too. We use water and fire and stones to create ceremonies that are surprising and heartfelt. Truly.
You've said surprising twice, so I'm going to assume that there is an element of that is necessary or important in this kind of work?
Well, many people have walked away from their traditional religious practices or religion, and they want a spiritual practice of some sort, but they don't want it in a traditional form. So the surprise comes in when you can step into a ceremony that you don't know anything about, and you can sense yourself in the ceremony, and so it wakes you up.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I love it.
It's fun.
Who else, Jeff, who else is doing this besides you and Kitty? What are the other, who else is involved in this work?
Well, we have other board members, and we're starting an associates program to help people who may not be, who have some experience with this, but who may not be wanting to jump in wholeheartedly, but to jump in a way to learn the processes and to be able to take those back to their communities. I think it's really beginning to catch on to use the word surprise, in some surprising places. People, my kids, basically, my wife too, basically joke a little bit about us being in the Bible Belt, and me going to seminary. It actually helps me with some of the language, but even some of the churches and groups that I've worked with are they're very hungry, not just for religiously oriented or traditional religiously oriented ritual and ceremony, but simplistic ceremony that just helps them transform from one place in their life to another.
What do you mean by simplistic?
Well, I think a ritual in and of itself is meant, it can resonate with a history. That's why we use the stones and the fire and the water. It resonates with just the basic primal energy of creation. I think a ritual can be very simplistic in that it doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles and the pomp and circumstance. It can be something that a symbol that a person can connect to with their own energy, and then be able to transform that energy into something different. And if you think about it, that's really what stereotypical people would talk about therapy, but that's really what a therapeutic intervention, a person who comes to someone hoping for change, hoping to let go of the stories that no longer serve them, really are there to look at a way to transform. And if you just stay in your head, that doesn't work very often at all. Or you spend 2 or 3 or 20 years trying to stay in your head and figure it all out.
Well, I think that's really interesting, because what you're talking about with ceremony, actually those are very grounded things. Anything that you talk about, well, I'm thinking metaphorically, this is about our body as well as the earth. So
Yes.
yeah. And we all love our heads. We're not bad-mouthing being in our heads,
no.
but since that's all we do, sometimes I think of our culture as a bunch of very beautiful helium balloons, and we just like to be up there. But I think all of our experiences, once you get someone in their body and they're able to access all those other intelligences, they do change, they do transform.
But people are scared to do that sometimes, and I think something as simple as a ritual with a stone or water, or even a simple breath, taking them outside of the literal, really helps them experience themselves. And I'm talking about things, even traumatic experiences in and of themselves that people don't want to be a part of. They desperately don't want to be a part of their body or a part of their thoughts. When you do something fairly simple to allow them to experience it in a different way, it just opens that energy a little bit more, and the possibility of transformation becomes very real at that point.
Yeah, that guidance. And this is why I think this organization and organizations like this are so important, because I think people are hungry for that, but it's hard to find on their own. So they need people who are skilled in other ways.
And that's what we spend a lot of our time doing. We train teachers to go back into their community and help their communities celebrate and create rituals for themselves. And that way people can be self-referencing. They can create their own ceremonies, the little simple ceremonies every day that give them life and keep them in touch with their subconscious motivations as they move through these changes in life. Yeah.
Somehow that ties in with something that I think is a basis for all this work, which is balancing between the personal and the universal. So taking them back into ancient ritual, even having a group of people that are supporting them by teaching them, allows them to take it personally, but it sits between those two things, which I think is really important.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But, Jeff?
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking that taking it to the universal, we're all human. We all experience the same experiences during life. And so to take it to the universal, we step into that path of being humans, that opening our love, opening our courage, opening our faith, opening our connection to each other, and also to the earth that we live on. So it's really important. That's a good point, Kim.
Yeah, thanks.
I think that connection is so vitally important, because without doing something communal, that's where people get, I agree, I mean, I make my living dealing with people's brains, but